since then, or is that the only one?
I have this one up here on my shoulder after I had open heart surgery. And apparently I didn't know this, but my cardiologist got really mad at me because he's like, you did what? And I'm like, well, I asked him the whole entire time that I was in the hospital because we had these plans to get all of us matching tattoos, my mom and my sister and I. And we'd had it set up for like the longest time and no one would answer me a straight question there. I think they were just trying to like, let's get you out of here and get you in a really good frame of mind and not like, you know, because I was really stressed at the time. And so everybody had said, oh yeah, we don't see any problem with it. So I got it and he got really mad at me. So that's probably the last tattoo I'm ever going to be able to have because he said, please just after this, like no more. So, but I wanted to get another one on this wrist of my lion, and I never got to do that because of all the other stupid stuff that happened in my life.
Well,
so
I'm sorry to hear that.
That's
Yeah,
probably
but
my last ink, but I got that.
Yeah, but I think that's crazy that someone that's not a fan of needles to have it like in one of the most painful spots. So kudos to you for, you know, going all in and doing that.
I was really surprised. It wasn't that bad. I think I cried just because I was so nervous.
That can happen. That can happen for sure. Well, so yeah, so that's really interesting too, that like you said, you've had your business for a while now. You said like over 12 years, right? So can you let us know like a little bit about it? What kinds of things do you have in your business for us to see and collect?
Yeah, so my business actually encompasses art on canvas all the way to fiber arts. So if you go to my website, you'll actually see some of that is like the backgrounds and stuff. And I have it broken down into sections on my website. So when I ended up having a bunch of problems and having to have like the open heart surgery and neck and spine surgery, I had them back to back and I wasn't able to do as many of the fiber arts as I used to be able to. I took up painting because I was limited in what I could do for how long. And so that's kind of how that part came into it. And then now that it's been a couple of years, it's kind of like, let's just get back on that horse and, you know, take it as far as I can possibly take it, because spinning and needle felting and blending and carding, all of the things are like my life. And so, yeah, so it's got all of the different aspects of fiber arts on my website and in my business. So I do, now I'm weaving. I just started doing that this year. So I do weaving, needle felting, spinning, dyeing.
And so all of the things that you do, then you do them for like commercial purposes, or are some things like just personal for you? Because I know like for myself, as an artist and a teacher, you know, I always want to share what I know with other people. I always want to like share techniques and things like that. But it's funny because as a dyer, I feel like that is the one thing that is very personal. And I don't like to share it in the sense of, not like my tips and tricks and things like that, but like to have a class or a workshop with people where we're like all dying together, that feels like that's like my I don't know, sacred space, you know? So is there anything like that, you know, as a fiber artist that learned this part is just for me?
Yeah. So any of my dyed work, yes, I do all the dyed fibers and stuff like that. And I do sell all of that. But yeah, you're right. As far as like a class and like, this is the exact step-by-step, I'm sorry, I just can't, because it's like some of the color combinations and the colorways that I've done are proprietary to me. And so I don't like to share that. But when I have had so many people ask me about, well, how did you get into dyeing? How do you do this or that? I willingly and very freely give those tips because I feel like, why not? Why not help somebody else who's trying to come up in the business? But yeah, if it comes to proprietary stuff, yeah, I totally agree. It's really hard. And it's hard to do when it's such a solitary kind of act, doing your dyeing and stuff. It's really honestly hard to have a class, especially the way that I like to dye. I like to do the warmers and stuff, and some stuff I kettle dye, but I switched a lot of stuff to the warmers because it's just easier and I can let it do its thing and all of that. So doing a class, yeah, I could see where that would be really difficult. So I haven't ventured into any of that because I just don't see how I could do that in a practical way.
Yeah. No, I don't, it's not even so much like the sharing of the recipes as much as like the actual act of dyeing to me feels like a very, like you said, a very solitary thing, right? And what's interesting too is that you have so many guilds, like spinning guilds and knitting guilds, and those to me are activities that are so enjoyable to do with a group of people. But then dyeing is like this one thing that's like, this is my own little, space. But I mean, I've done it with students before, with like Kool-Aid and food coloring, and that was, really like fun, but also crazy and chaotic. And you're like, no, you don't want dye powder everywhere and all of that. So, yeah. So how did you actually get into the fiber arts then? Like, what was the first thing you learned about or did or got excited by?
So this is going to sound so weird, but I started out as a knitter, actually. My sister started knitting when her husband, her boyfriend at the time, but he went to Iraq and Afghanistan. She was just going crazy. And she's like, I don't know what to do. I'm so worried about him. And so he said, babe, you need to find a hobby because you can't just be worried about me all the time. And so she decided, my Nana's knitted forever since we were kids. And she decided, I'm gonna take up knitting. I'm gonna make a thing of this. And so I was watching her and she was making all these beautiful sweaters and stuff. And I'm like, okay, I want to learn how to do that too. So she taught me. And I discovered that I'm not a very quick knitter. I can do some stuff, but I've never done like a sweater or anything because math and stuff in my brain doesn't work very well. So for me, patterns are really difficult. And so I was talking to her about that and she's like, I got a spinning wheel and I haven't really played with it a whole bunch, but she's like, I wonder if that'd be something you'd be good at, like you'd be interested in it. And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to try it. And so I kind of detoured away from the knitting and stuff. And one of my girlfriends that owns the local LYS down here in Medford, she said, yeah, come out and use my spinning wheel. And it just went from there. I started spinning and was pretty natural at it. So I've just done that. And then I've done some continuing educational courses, along the way at different points, but never really had a super formal, this is how you spin type of education. And then of course, we all know as fiber artists that spinning leads to other rabbit holes like needle felting and weaving and all the things. So it just kind of went off from there.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. The part that you said about reading patterns, because like I knew how to crochet and knit before I was spinning, but I never actually read a pattern. So I would just kind of do scarves or blankets or just basically keep making rows, and working in these like rectangular shapes, right? And so then I had this idea that I was going to make a sweater, but I don't know, it wasn't even that I didn't think that like sweater patterns existed, but I thought if I was going to make one, I should make one that would fit me, not like a store-bought one or something like that. Or, like from like a pattern that like I wouldn't know if it would fit me. So I tried to take like my measurements from a sweater and try to break it down. And that was the most like painful experience because I didn't know anything about like, okay, by the time I got to the end of the spinning for it, I finally learned about this thing called grist, right? Which is like basically how dense your yarns are. And so then like I had a range of grist, I had a range of yarn thicknesses, and I had to think about like how I was going to put it all together. And like, I didn't know with knitting that things grow when you wash them, and like just the direction of, it was awful. It was awful. And I was like, how do people make stuff that like fits them, and it took me, I don't know, like at least 3 different times of trying to make something just not using a pattern to realize, okay, this is probably why people use patterns. So, but yeah, it can be very intimidating, especially because not every pattern designer necessarily follows the same formula or like, you know, format for writing patterns, right? So like we can have ones that are super complicated, but if they're really well written, okay, I got this, you know, but like sometimes it's like, what is this person talking about? I have no idea what they're telling me to do. So
oh yeah, no, I completely get that. And so I figured this would be a really nice way for me to make all the pretty things and not, my mind just works so much more abstractly. Like if you mention math to me, I kind of just freeze and I'm like, okay, I'm having an internal anxiety attack right now, you know? But if I'm able to just do what I want and do it really free, then it's so much more relaxing to me. So that made a lot more sense for me to make that departure than to try to force me to do something that my mind
and I think that's like something that's very you know, interesting about the fiber arts in general, right? Because you have this kind of spectrum of like with needle felting for the most part, you know, I'm not saying that there aren't like rules in it, right? But like you don't necessarily need math in that type of project in the same way maybe that you would need to keep track of things like rows and stitches in knitting and crocheting. But to me, you said you got into weaving, and I find weaving so fascinating because when I first took a workshop on weaving, there's this place in Rochester called the Weaving and Fiber Art Center, and they have like all these cool classes there, and one of them was weaving, and I thought, okay, you know, I've never done it, like let me try it. And the thinking that has to go into like what you're going to weave mathematically and like patterning and, you know, the warp and all of that has always been something that I never understood. Why do people enjoy weaving? Because it seems so painful before you get to this place of actually, you know, having fun, right? And so then I just completely avoided it. I just like, forget it. This is not for me. But then I tried Saori weaving and more of this like freeform weaving approach. And, you know, they have these warps that are like ready to go. So you don't have to think about it. And I love the fact that there's a way that you can weave without necessarily having to follow a pattern or know that there's like a right or a wrong to it. So when you got into weaving, like what was the thing that made you try it? And like, what kinds of things do you make with your woven fabric?
So I do, on the smaller looms that have the stands on them and everything. And then I have a bigger loom that's in the other part of my studio. And that was what I saw. I saw a bunch of gals like using art yarn and all kinds of like pretty colors and everything. And that was my catch with weaving too. I would be like, no, I don't ever want to do that. That sounds horrible. Why would anybody put themselves through that? That sounds just terrible. And but then I saw these other gals that were doing all of these like really free form, really organic, and I'm like, okay, I can get behind that because I can take and make that in my mind and do something really pretty and have just a fun organic composition, right? Not all of the really fine stitching. And so I got a loom, and it was a really nice big loom. It's actually a little too big. But I made my first piece on that, and it was so nice because it was so relaxing. And I like that you can put so many different textures in it. So you can use, you know, your roving, you can use hand spun, you can use your art yarns, you can use your cotton fabrics, like all kinds of stuff. And then you can just either tell a story with it and kind of make a picture, or just make something that's freeform and really organic, but so appealing to the eye and just really pretty. And that's what made me fall in love with weaving. And now I can take all my pretty hand spuns that I might not have been able to knit, but now I can use them for weaving because my mind can work better that way. So yeah,
no, I definitely think that all of the yarns that are like left over on your bobbins as singles, you know, when people are like, well, what do I do with it? I'm like, throw it on the loom, or, you know, if there's like a little bit left over from a project, I just save all of those things. I even have here, I have this little bin of just like all of the little things that are kind of like my scrapping. And if I don't put them into bats, then I have them for like little accents to throw into the weavings that I do. And I think that's the thing that is so nice about weaving, is that it can almost be like in the moment spontaneous, whereas with knitting, you can do free form knitting, but I almost find that following a pattern in knitting is actually easier than doing it freeform, you know, but like, I love the way that freeform knitting looks. It just, that to me seems almost more complicated, like actually following the weaving structure, like where am I supposed to go next? And there's just too much freedom. So sometimes having like the confines of the loom, and I'm okay, this is my space that I'm going to create in, but I can play with texture, I can play with color, like you said, stories, you know, so all of that is like, all of that's up my alley. So I definitely, you know, like love all of those ideas that you're talking about. So what do you actually do though with your fabric? Do you just like make yardages of it and you haven't really decided what you want to do with it, or where are you thinking that's going to go?
Oh, or like, what are you talking about? Like for the weaves?
Yeah. Like when you have the woven fabric, are you planning to make clothing with it, or is it just
no,
like for
so all of
decoration?
mine, sorry, I should have been like more specific. So they're all like the tapestry format. They're not on like one of the rigid heddles where you have a pattern. So all of mine are on like a tapestry type loom. And so those are super fun. And I just finished a piece and I have to pull it off and tie all the ends and all that stuff. And then I wanted to rework my big loom out here in the other side of the studio and just kind of play, just put a bunch of textures and colors and I don't know, just see what happens. And
okay, so it's more for like home decor then, as far as like functional then.
Yeah, and to like, you know, to look at and to be pretty. And then I want to sell some, obviously, you know, at some point. I did one for my sister-in-law for Christmas and she fell in love with it, but it took me forever to do. And I'm like, dude, you don't even understand how much I love you to, you know. So I'm working more towards that part of the business, but I think it's just going to take a little while because I'm still, you know, still getting everything together. And I try not to be a perfectionist, but I mean, if we're all honest with ourselves, we all kind of want things to be a certain way before we really put our final stamp of approval and say, yes, this is me.
Yeah, no, I totally agree that there's the vision that you have in your head for how you want things to come out, whether it's like a sweater that actually fits you, or, you know, like I've been struggling with this needle felting landscape that I've been doing because, and I know because you were saying that you do needle felting as well. I understand the concept of directional shrinking because of like the process of needle felting, right? But yeah. I was trying to do this landscape where I wanted these boats to kind of like sit looking like they're on the horizon, but then how I was felting them, even though I'm going up and down, they're starting to get distorted. And now it's looking like, I don't know, like there's a storm about to come because my boats are like all over the place, you know? And it's one of those things where it's like, no, I'm not really a needle felter. This is maybe my fourth needle felting thing that I've done, but I know that in your mind, like you said, when you're doing painting or when you're doing other types of, you know, creative outlet, yeah, that you're making other kinds of art things or creative things, that you have a degree of skill, right? And so when you know what you want and your skill doesn't match, that like that can be really frustrating. So of all of the things though, what do you love the most, like to make? What's your favorite? Are you like spinning? Is that where your heart is? Is it the weaving now? Where would you say your favorite spot is now?
Oh, it's like saying like, which one is your favorite child? That's not fair. It's like,
so you're a bouncer then. You like to go from one to the other.
I really, really do. I mean, this last week was spring break. And so I actually sat down and I love my needle felted jellyfish. They're one of my favorite things that I love to make. So I'm like, I'm going to make a bunch of needle felted jellyfish.
Do you have any near you that we could see? Or could you put a picture of one of them in the comments when we're done? Okay.
I do. He's one of my older ones, but
oh, that's so cool with the locks and everything.
Yeah, and so he's kind of fun, and he's got awesome. His fishing wire, so you can hang him wherever you want, and then he kind of becomes invisible and he looks like he's really floating. So I was working on a bunch more because the locks are some of my favorite things to work with, but I don't like brushing them out. I like the structure. I like keeping them pretty. And so that gives me a really good opportunity to use them and to play with color and texture and all the things. So I I just made a bunch of those over the break. And then I spin, and it's so hard because it kind of honestly depends on my mood, like from day to day. Some days I'm sitting there thinking, oh, I really want to make some bats. Because I've got him back here, and I want to blend some colors and see what I can come up with. And I feel like I do a really good job with color and color theory, especially in dyeing and painting, but also blending. And so that's super fun for me. But then there's other days where I'm like, I want to needle felt some jellyfish. I want to make a new weave. So I kind of have, I don't know what you call it, like fiber artist ADHD or something.
Yeah, well, I think because like we were kind of discussing this in my group that I have, as far as where does creative motivation come from and why do we stop working on things, right? So for this past year, we're working through the 100-day challenge, where you pick a project and you work on it all the way through. And a lot of the members in my group, we were working on finishing as many work in progress projects as possible. And so the thing that really strikes me, right, is what do all of your work in progress projects that never get finished have in common? And so if you begin to actually like work through a project, there are some projects, that are very easy to finish, right? Like your jellyfish. I don't know if you have any other details that you add to it, but for the most part, it looked like a jellyfish to me, right? So that seems like it's easy to complete. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of making an assumption here. But if there's something that, when you're talking about like knitting for a pattern, that can really either get you stuck depending upon what the knitting designer gave you instructional wise, or maybe the yarn is not working out, but also like, how do we go into our projects, right? Like our headspace. So if we were, like you said, that there have been things in your life that have been really challenging, and that leaning into the fiber arts has been a way of kind of almost like artist therapy, or like fiber artist therapy. And and like having that release. But then there are other times, that I think that if we're really frustrated by things going on in our life, and then we try to do a project, that frustration might carry over into that perfectionism realm where we're not able to get it how we want it. So then we begin to see that maybe like we're not that we're flawed, but that we're not good enough, we're not capable. And we have this like really negative self-talk, and we just abandon that project because it has such a like a negative kind of reinforcement of how we're feeling going into it, right? But even though we could have started that project really excited and hopeful, and we like couldn't wait to start it, now it becomes this thing that we almost like lament having to do and revisit. So just examining the creative process. And I think it's really interesting when you said to bounce around, because I think for myself, like I need to have a project that is portable. I need to have a project that's complicated, and I need to have a project that I can work on spontaneously. And if I can have those three to bounce between, I think it like feeds all of those spots in myself that I like as an artist. But if I'm being, honest and like looking at the bulk of my work in progress projects, it's because they require a sustained amount of time and attention and physical space that at this point in my life, I don't feel like I'm able to do. But when I started them, I was able to. So it might've been before having a child, or, before a different job. And so I hear, like a lot of people saying, I don't have time, right? I don't have time to create, and I think like, even with your jellyfish, you said you did it over break. So it's like, if we can find things that we enjoy to do, but also being aware of when do we create at our like best or our peak, right? So if we're really good at completing short little tasks that are, easy to complete, then maybe we should just focus on doing jellyfish this week. And, maybe next week we have more brain space because our taxes are done.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I feel like my brain has melted, because that was the other thing I was doing over my spring break. And I'm just like, I would rather sit here and continue to needle felt jellyfish, because
exactly. And so being mindful, right? Because like our like headspace, or our minds might be in a different creative area, depending upon how stressed we are, how much time we have, and all of that. So I think, as someone that has ADHD too. Like I think having that variety is actually healthy, because if we only stuck with one project, and kudos to anyone that is able to do this, but I think if we stuck to one project, that might almost make us like not enjoy doing that thing. Like if I knew you were telling me that I had to finish this one thing that was frustrating the crap out of me before I could do anything else, I'd flip the bird and like go in the other direction. Right? So.
Exactly. No, and it's so true. And I've been a person who, because of all like the medical traumas and different things like that, has really struggled with anxiety. And so if I am too overwhelmed and trying to do a project, like for me, anxiety doesn't look like breathing in a paper bag. Anxiety looks like I'm going to shut down and I'm not going to do anything. I might have a pile of things that I know I have to do, but none of them are going to get done. And so being able to take that time to go here or go there where my mind feels like the most clear has been, like you said, such therapy, because it's something that I can put my heart into and do. And it just allows me to just breathe,
Yeah.
So,
and like we were talking about this with like Tanya last time too, that the way that our brains work is so fascinating to me. And that before knowing that I had ADHD, that I would really lean into my fiber art projects as a way of cope, so like going to, I don't know, like not necessarily large crowds, but if I have to go to a situation where there aren't other fiber people, that social anxiety starts to ramp up. And I didn't even like know to identify it as such, but bringing knitting with me, even if I don't actually touch it, like if I'm going to go to a party and I don't know people, if I have my knitting, I feel safe. Even if I don't take it out of my bag, I just have to have it with me and I feel safe,
No, it's a legit thing. It really is. It's kind of nice to know. And I think part of like people that have that type of situation or like anxiety, I think part of it is really being able to control your surroundings. And when you're in a place that you can't control, having one thing that you can control, even like you said, even if you don't touch it, just knowing that it's there, it's like, okay, we're okay. And if I'm not okay, I can go and do this thing and ignore all the people.
Yeah, well, but the thing about knitting though, right, and spinning probably more than anything else, but pretty much all the fiber arts, if you think about it, right, so needle, felting, weaving, all of them are repetitive. And the idea of going through a repetitive type of motion, like that can also be known as like stimming, where you like just repeat something over and over as a way of calming yourself down. And so the act of knitting, right, like if I'm moving my hands, I feel like I'm getting this nervous physical energy out of my body, but I also have something to kind of show for it. And I find it's really interesting if you do stick with the project, in a specific time in your life, you might look at that object and you might say, okay, like, yes, I love the colors and all that, but I remember going through something and that shawl was what got me through it, or that making that, weaving or whatever got me through it, because I was able to take what was in my head and kind of channel it out of my body into a positive way. And then those pieces almost become like these mile markers of not only the creative process of how we've improved skill-wise, but also kind of in our life story.
Yeah. And no, I agree. I absolutely do. I agree. And I love that, because to me, I feel like perspective is a big thing, like in just your health and your well-being and your mental health, but it's how you choose to look at it. Like if something bad's going on when you're doing that project, you can choose to look at it and it'll be a reminder of, oh, this horrible thing was happening in my life. Or you can choose to look at it as like, oh my gosh, yes, I remember that was a terrible time in my life, but wow, I'm so thankful that I'm on the other side of it now. And this is actually a reminder of, look at how far you've come, rather than, all the negative stuff. So I love that aspect too, because there are some things that I do have hanging up in my house that are, fiber arts or paintings or different things that I've done. And I'm just like, wow, I remember when I was there and that was not a very good place. That was a really hard time, but look at the beauty that came out of it, So
those pieces are interesting to me, because I never know if I should, sell them or get rid of them or whatever, or if I should keep them because it's kind of like, this symbol of growth or this symbol of like making it through something, and it can be painful to look at, things like that maybe you were using as a coping strategy or mechanism to get through, and then, looking at it again if it reminds you of that. So I'm always fascinated by not the physical time that goes into making pieces, because I have pieces that have been, knitted completely just in the doctor's waiting rooms or like restaurants in between ordering the food coming, like those, that's the only time that I created. But there are other pieces that definitely were made with that intention of getting those thoughts and ideas and feelings out in a positive way. And so I really feel like those ones kind of, not that they're necessarily like elevated to more than art, but they have so much more weight to them and so much more meaning to them, as opposed to just a sweater, like, no, that's a sweater that captured something really, significant in my life.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I feel like it's so interesting how I've had people that don't even do the fiber arts or know any of really like my backstory or any of that, like any of the stuff that I've been through in literally the last 3 years. All this happened within like the last 3 years. And they've come in and they're like, they look at one of the pieces like, and they're like, wow. And I'm like, yeah, so what do you see? Because I don't want to say anything. I just want to know, what is it? Like, something captured you in that moment. What was that? And just having them hearing them say like how they're experiencing that piece and how it's speaking to them and what it means to them. And I'm like, oh, that's so interesting, because this was what was happening when I was doing. And so I've just kind of really learned that some of those things that I've done, when some of those things have happened in my life, some of those pieces I hold on to like for memories for me. And then some of them I've been able to detach from and say, this wasn't for me. This is for somebody else. This is going to speak to somebody else. And I think that's so cool about, art and the fiber arts and stuff too, because if I'm not attached to something, I've just learned to say, that's interesting. This is meant for somebody else. And so it's really cool to see what other people see in my work and, kind of compare notes where my intentions were. It's really neat, because I'm fascinated by how people's minds work and how like something just speaks to their heart,
Yeah, definitely. Especially if it's not a finished product, right? So like if you're making a bat or if you're making yarn and, maybe making that bat was like a day that, you were saying like maybe you were feeling rather anxious, and just being able to kind of sit and just maybe like mentally zone out and just allow the colors and textures to speak to you. You were able to get it out of your body and your mind, but now it's maybe going to someone that, spinning or felting does something relaxing for them. So it's almost like it can have multiple healing benefits or multiple, lives or cycles, of bringing that. And then, if that person, let's say spins yarn, maybe they sell the yarn and it goes off to become something that a knitter uses, so I think that's something that's really very unique and different in the fiber arts compared to like, say like a woodworker that does a carving, it kind of just ends right there.
Yeah, it is what it is. And then from there, you either make a judgment off of a perspective or you don't. And yeah, I find that the fiber arts in that sense, I find that it's so neat, because like sometimes like almost every year I try to make something for my sister for Christmas. When I wasn't able to spin or any of that stuff, it was really hard. And so I didn't. But before that, I would make her, because again, she's a fabulous knitter. I'm like, dude, I want you to make something pretty out of this. So I would make her yarns. And this year, I finally got to spin her a yarn after not being able to do it for so long. And so that has brought so much healing to me. But then it was really funny, because she took one of the older yarns that I had spun for her, and then one of the newer yarns, and she made something out of them. And she's like, wow, like, I just want to tell you, like, as a knitter, your work is really awesome. Like, I love how it knits up and I love the colors. And she's just like, I can see how much you've improved. And that was super healing for me too, because, sometimes when you're going through a rough spot and you got to put something down for literally, for me, it was like a couple of years, and not really be able to pick it up except maybe every here and there, like very rarely. You kind of want that affirmation, like, oh, I've still got it. I can still do a good job. Like, go me, right? And so that was super healing to hear that from her. And you don't always get that with, something else. And it's just, yeah, it just makes me so happy. And it makes me happy to see all the pretty things that she makes with the yarn and fiber and stuff that I spin and I give it to her. It's like, yay.
Well, I mean, that sounds like a wonderful relationship, even outside of the fiber arts, but that you have that with her as like a commonality and something that, like bonds you and brings you together. I think that's the other piece of the fiber arts too. Like when we were saying, dying solo, but again, having that community, even being part of like the wool and fiber arts group, right? That there's these people like yourself that I've never met in person, but I feel like because we do similar things, there's this like automatic connection where it's like, okay, you're my people, and you just get it, and when you meet someone that just gets it, I don't know, it just kind of like opens up a whole new set of doors. And it's nice to be able to have that, knowing that the joy that the fiber arts brings to you is something that we have in common. And I don't know, there's like, I don't know if you've ever been to like a larger fiber festival, in your neck of the woods, if you ever traveled, but like, I know going to Rhinebeck, right? So it's about a 4-hour, drive away from where I live. And there'll be people that are lining up at like, let's say the gates open at 9. So there'll be people there, at like 6:37, just waiting to get in. But the conversations that people are having with each other, right? Like, oh, I love your sweater. That's fabulous. Like, where did you make it? And there's this happiness and excitement of connecting with other people. It's not just, I'm going to go to this fiber festival to shop. It's like, I want to see the people that are here and I want to talk to the people that are here. And there's really this, I don't know, just, those are the people that you want to engage with, as opposed to, thinking like, okay, I'm going to go to this, place, like, I don't know, like the grocery store, right? You go there to shop, you're not looking to make conversation, right? But a fiber festival is very different. And I think that it really just captures, I think, the whole, not even just the fiber art community, but just like people that are into the fiber arts. They want that, connection on a deeper level, not just that surface, that's just my thoughts on it. But
no, I totally agree. I think it's true. And I have loved being part of the WAFA group because not only vending, but just like as just a member, because there's now girls that, I shouldn't say girls, women, ladies that I'm now talking to like literally almost on a daily basis. And some of them were customers, and some of them were not. And some of them were just people that they literally, one of the ladies that I talked to asked me, she put up in the thread some questions about, I think it was dyeing actually. And so I messaged her and I said, well, you can do this or you can do that. Here's all the things that you need to do. This is some resources that you can look at. And I'm like, actually, why don't you just PM me? Because I'm going to overwhelm you with information. And so she said, okay. And like, we chat every single day now. And not all of it is about dyeing fiber or spinning fiber, any of that stuff anymore. It's like, hey, how are you doing? Like, how are your kids? Like, how are things going in your life? And I feel like it's a bridge to make a connection with somebody that you wouldn't normally get to connect with. And I feel like after like all this COVID stuff and the lockdowns and everything, I feel like that's something we've really been missing, is being able to connect as humans, like on a much deeper level. And I love that this group and like the fiber arts in general has been a way to kind of bridge that gap. Like, here's your I'm going to give you some information about dyeing, but now I know you as a human. And that's just so cool. It's so neat to find people that have different things that are in common with you or can relate to, your life story. It's just fabulous. And I love it. I love it so much.
No, I definitely agree with you on all points. So Just because, again, in the spirit of doing these Fiberside chats, we've been talking about holidays, and I know that when I reached out initially, there were that many exciting holidays today, but yesterday was National Respect Your Cat Day. So like in a belated fashion, if we're going to celebrate that today, tell me, have you done anything yesterday, or do you anticipate doing anything today to show your cat some respect, or if you even have a cat to show respect to?
I do. I have a cat. He was just in here a second ago. His name is Hunter. And actually, I came home from work yesterday, and I knew you were going to ask me this question. I knew it. It was the darndest thing. Something scared him really bad yesterday. I don't know what it is, because he's not an outdoor kitty. He's an indoor kitty. And I don't know if like a bird hit the window or what, but I came home from work and he was just not okay. So we spent the rest of the day yesterday with him on my lap and getting all the pets and all the cuddles. And I tell you what, that cat is so spoiled anyway. It's ridiculous. I had the intention of getting a farm cat because I have property out here, right? And he was supposed to be like indoor outdoor cat, and I wasn't really supposed to form such a huge attachment to him. But now I'm just like, you're never going outside because I don't want you to get eaten by coyotes or cougars or anything. So he's definitely one of my babies, and yesterday was just literally all about him.
Yeah,
So,
no, I know it's really fascinating to me, like how a cat's personality when they're inside versus when they go out, because
yeah.
if you encounter an outdoor cat, like in their outdoor environment, they'll come up like if they're, friendly, they'll come up and they'll like rub all over you. They'll be like, oh, it's like a nice person. They'll be, so grateful. Right. And like inside, the cat's like, I have nothing to do with you until it's time to feed me. Then, you'll be my best friend. And, after that, like, okay, forget you. I'm going to go off and sleep in my own corner. But like outside cats, I don't know. There's just something about them where they really appreciate, another creature being nice to them. Whereas like indoor ones, I don't know. So I have my cat Glenn. He's passed out. I don't know if it's going to be very respectful, but I know that he can be a crowd favorite. So I'm gonna go see if I can get him on camera. Is your guy in nearby, or you said he walked away, right?
I wish. Hunter, come here.
Okay, let's see.
Kitty. Hunter.
So my cat Glenn is very portable because he fell asleep in this basket.
Oh my gosh.
So here, Glenn. Can you say?
Hi? Hi, kitty.
He's like, this is not very respectful, Alanna. This is why is my bed floating over here? Yeah, but he's my.
I don't know.
I don't know if I did anything to show respect to him. But I definitely gave him a lot of treats and I respected his personal space. So I guess that's how I celebrated. So I'm just going to go real quick to the chat, to the comment part and see if there are any questions. Okay. So if any of you that are watching live, if you have any questions for Christina, you can just go ahead and put them in the chat and I can read them off to her. Otherwise, it just seems like most people were saying hello to us. So we're getting some hugs and laughs. Okay, I got a yay, Glenn. See, so if you can hunt for Hunter.
I know. Where did that cat go? Hunter, come here, Mo. Oh, here we are.
Oh, I heard him yell.
I hear.
Come on, Hunter. We want to meet you. Oh, he's so cute.
And he's so spoiled. Oh my gosh. There we go. Oh, here we go. He's like, what is
I think every day should be like respect your cat day.
Oh, so yeah, he's my buddy. He sleeps with me and he sits in the chair and everything with me. He's actually, I'm really surprised because you know how you said like indoor kitties are usually kind of like, I don't want anything to do with you or anything like that. Which now
like that.
He's actually surprisingly cuddly. Like he wants to come and sit on my lap and just be loved and cuddled. And he gets really jealous when the dogs are sitting on my lap. I have a black lab and an Irish water spaniel. So they're not little. So when they sit with me on the sofa or in the chair, they take up like half of the chair.
Yeah.
And so he gets really irritated because then he gets this little tiny sliver. So
Yeah.
yes, he's very, very spoiled.
There's a lot of fans that are saying yay Hunter and hugs to Hunter. So they're sending Hunter some love. So all right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today during this Fiberside chat. And thank you to you, Christina, for joining me. It was a pleasure talking to you. And again, for those of you that are interested in seeing the previous Fiberside chats, you can just go ahead in the Wool and Fiber Arts group and search for the hashtag Fiberside Chats. And next week on the 4th, I'm going to be interviewing Ashley Hoffman of Cedar View Farm at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard on Monday. So I hope you can join us. And again, if you can't, don't worry about it. It'll be recorded. The video will be in the group, getting lots of thank yous. So thank you all for joining us and for joining in on the conversation.
Thank you so much for having me on here. This has been so much fun.
Great. Well, I can't wait to see what gorgeous things you have, the pictures of the jellyfish and the weavings and all of the wonderful creations that come out of your studio. So thanks so much again.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.